Hi, my name's Mark Dunn. I perform under the name M D Dunn. I write mostly poetry and songs and short stories. I've written two novels that will never see the light of day. They're not very good. There's not much there to work with, but it was good practice to write them. I'd like to write a half decent novel, but one of my goals in writing is to write a good short story. I've written a lot of short stories, but I'm not really satisfied with many of them or any of them. My poetry is, I've been fairly widely published. I've been lucky in that regard. I have three books published, and most recently, Even the Weapons, which came out in 2014. And I've released 9 albums of music. My publishing practice or process is, well, I like to work with publishers for my poems. So I don't publish my poetry online. I tend to send to journals, that kind of thing, and get rejected a lot. And then once in a while, something gets accepted. And so far with the 3 books, I've went with small independent publishing houses, and I don't self-publish my poetry. The music I put out, I produce it myself and distribute it myself. But the one thing about the poetry, let's say, market or the publishing industry with poetry in Canada, it's quite volatile. Unless you are lucky enough to get in with one of the bigger or more established poetry houses. For instance, I've had 3 books published, 3 books of poems, and from 2 different presses, and both presses are now closed because the publisher's retired. So my books are basically out of print. They can be found, online here and there, but I have copies of them. I first started thinking of myself as a writer. I was quite young, actually. I'd been writing for a long time. I can't even remember when I started writing, and I don't know why. I didn't read a lot as a child. I just felt compelled to write, and it seems as soon as I could put words together on a page, like many children, I was writing poetry and short stories, and I even tried to write a novel, which was a big space opera, when I was about maybe 8 years old, probably influenced by Star Wars. But the first time I remember thinking that or understanding what writing was in 2nd grade, so I was about 7, and the teacher gave us a list. The teacher was Mrs. Gideon in Sault Ste. Marie. She gave us a list of titles and told us to write a poem from these titles, and I just kind of started, and I worked through the whole list, and I wrote like 10 poems with using her prompts, her writing prompts. Yeah, that would have been grade 2, and she really loved them, and that for me was really important. I still remember the feeling because like I said, I'd been writing a lot, but I didn't know what it was that I was doing, and I didn't know that what I was writing could be called poems. Right? It was just things that I wrote about things that I thought about or saw, or little songs that I made up, kind of thing. All children do that, and some people are foolish enough to carry it into their adulthood. I do not believe in writer's block. I think writer's block is a convenient excuse. The remedy for writer's block is to write. Sometimes you write, you can go for hours, heck, you can go for years and accomplish nothing, but it's important to keep going. And writer's block kind of comes into it when one stops writing. And the other, I think, cure for writer's block is to not think about it as you're writing. You kind of wear 2 hats as a writer. You're a writer and you're an editor. So I always suggest, try not to edit your work while you're writing it. When you're writing it, just write it. And that'll solve the writer's block problem. Too often we get bogged down in, is it any good? Does it make sense? What am I doing here? As you're writing, and all those thoughts will distract from the writing. When you're writing, write. When you're editing, edit. And that should take care of writer's block. When I'm feeling frustrated with my writing, I I try to keep going, but I also take breaks. And as I get older, I find I'm not quite as disciplined as I used to be. I used to write every day, and now I kind of wait until something stirs or something inspires me to write. It's good to carry a notebook around so that you're always inviting that energy to come through. And that's kind of my prescription for avoiding writer's block, which doesn't exist. It's an illusion. It's just an excuse. Yeah, as I said, all three of my books are technically out of print. When that happens, when the publisher closes, you end up getting boxes of books, of unsold books. So I have them, and I sell them. I give them away. I have quite a few of them available. All three of my books are available at the public library. The first book, Ghost Music, it's published under Mark D. Dunn, and as is the second book, Fancy Clapping. And the third book is published under M D Dunn, which I prefer, and that's called Even the Weapons. And they're available at the public library. You can still find them on, I think, through Amazon Chapters online, and all those used places like ABE Books. And if you bump into me, I'll get you one. I have copies. Do you want a book? I have some. So thank you for listening, and keep writing, everybody. Keep reading. If I could just say one thing, I like to tell writers, mostly I like to tell myself, almost more important than the writing is reading. Writers who don't read regularly really can lose a lot of their writing power. Reading is probably the quickest and the best way to develop as a writer and develop as a user of language. So fall in love with reading first, and then let that compel you to write. So thanks. Take care.